All right, guys, so today I'm going to show you a trick that I learned for controlling recoil, something that helped me become a lot more accurate with my shots at range. If you guys have heavier thumbs like I do, or you have bigger hands and longer thumbs, making it harder to make those micro adjustments on your right stick, you're going to want to stick around for this video. It can definitely help you become a lot more accurate and consistent with your shots. Now, I've never seen anyone else ever mention these last two tips that I'm going to show you. I first started doing them back at the end of Verdansk, but before I get into that, I want to show you something that can help you out tremendously with controlling recoil. A lot of you have probably heard of this before. I just want to mention it for anyone that hasn't. Now, what I'm talking about are these rings that you can buy. The main ones are made by Control Freak, but the ones that I use are made by a company called Epidon. They're called target rings. Right now, I'm on an Astro C40 controller with a taller right stick. I use that just because it helps a lot since I have bigger hands. It gives me a little bit more leverage to pull down with. Now, the Epidon target rings that I use are specifically for taller thumbsticks. There's a bunch of different kinds you can buy for different controllers. They come in different strengths as well, either giving the stick more or less tension. The reason I mention this is because when it comes to controlling recoil, especially precision shooting at long range, these rings can help out tremendously with making those micro adjustments. It'll make it so if you start pulling down too much while you're compensating, it'll sort of act like a stopgap from going too far. So as you pull down on the right stick, you'll notice it feels super smooth, allowing you to put a little bit more pressure as you're pulling down without having to worry about going down too far or too fast. It also helps you control the direction you want to go depending on which way the recoil is going. Now, obviously, these things are just huge for overall aim in general, but recoil's where I've seen the biggest advantage. Now, when you first get them, they might feel a little bit too stiff, but all you have to do is either shoot bots or go into the firing range and break them in. You can just do little circles with your right stick for a little bit, and eventually they'll loosen up. Now, just quickly, the way I have them set up is I actually have three of them stacked on top of each other because my right stick is so tall, and I also have a twist tie that wraps around the top, holding the target rings down. Eventually, they really start to loosen up, and the twist tie can slow that down and keep the tension. Anytime it starts to get too loose, I'll just take them off, fluff them out, flip them over, and put them back on. They've made me so much more accurate when it comes to controlling recoil. Now, the ones that I use, you can get them on Amazon, or you can get the Control Freak ones right at GameStop. They vary in price, not more than $30. I'll leave a link to the target rings down in the description. Now, this is in no way a sponsored video. I have no affiliation with any of these companies that make these. I just wanted to mention it to you guys because it's something that actually works. Now, this next tip I'm going to show you can be used with or without precision rings. When I first discovered this trick back in Verdansk, I wasn't using any of the rings yet, and since I have longer thumbs, it makes it difficult to pull down at just the right speed, distance, and angle, especially in a stressful situation, a 1v1 at the end, or if someone's behind cover and on a head glitch. I have a hard time pulling the recoil back down and keeping my shots straight. Well, one day I was watching something, I think it was on the principles of jiu-jitsu, how it's based on leverage. For some reason, it suddenly got me thinking, what if instead of using the small muscles of my thumb to pull the right stick down, instead I use the bigger muscles of my wrist and my forearm to slowly rotate my whole hand backwards? I remembered seeing somewhere that in real world situations, whenever you're under stress, you start to lose fine motor control, especially with the smaller muscles. So for example, they tell you whenever you're learning to use a real handgun, whenever you're learning to rack the slide, you want to use your whole hand instead of just two fingers. That way there you're not relying on the motor control. Well, after trying it against bots in a private match, I realized I seem to have more control over the recoil by just sort of rotating my hand backwards instead of only pulling my thumb down. Now, I had to practice against bots for a while to get this down, just so I would even remember to use it in game, and I also had to make it muscle memory before I could get it to work in a live situation. But after a while, I realized this made it way easier to control recoil, especially if I was shooting at long range. Now, over time throughout Caldera, I found little ways to make it easier. I found that if you place the controller down on a desk, you're able to get much better leverage, making it easier to control how you want to pull the thumbstick down. It also makes it easier to control the direction that you want to pull. A lot of times with your thumb, it's hard to tell if you're pulling straight back or if the thumb is drifting to the left or to the right. If you've ever tried controlling recoil and all of a sudden your aim shoots all over the place, then you probably know what I'm talking about. Now, one thing I started doing too is using my left hand to sort of at the same time slowly tilt the controller forward in the direction the recoil is going, while at the same time tilting my right hand straight back. So if the recoil is going straight up and to the left, my left hand tilts forward and left, and then my right hand tilts straight back. Now, I know that sounds like a lot, but once you get it down, it becomes muscle memory, and then it's done all at once, all in one motion. Now, it's gonna look something sort of like this. It's sort of like a twisting motion. Your left hand goes forward and your right hand goes back. Now, another important thing, if you keep this part of your hand tight to the controller and then you slowly start tilting forward, your hand here is going to work sort of like a stopgap from accidentally tilting too far, and it's going to allow you to control how far you want to go. Even if you're only using this hand to pull back, this part of your hand will prevent you from going too far. Now, basically, all you want to do to practice is just make sure you aim in and fire first and foremost, and then with your right hand tight to the controller, just sort of tilt forwards and backwards with each hand, with your left hand dictating the direction that the recoil is going. If the recoil is pretty much straight up, then you're just going to slowly tilt back with your right wrist and make sure the controller is going straight back, almost like you're pulling your hands backwards a little bit. Now, if you find you have issues with the left and right, you can always tilt straight back with your right hand and then use your left stick to slowly strafe in the opposite direction the recoil is going. I use this a lot on weapons that go straight up at first and then start drifting left or right after I've been firing for a bit. You see me doing it here in the pregame. I start firing, and then after a few milliseconds, I start strafing in the opposite direction of the recoil. Once the recoil is about to go right, I immediately start strafing left. This can be huge at long range when an enemy is either moving or behind cover. Now, since I started using the precision rings, I've been using the strafing method a lot. It makes me feel super accurate. I do still use the two-handed method though here and there, especially on guns that have stronger recoil, and especially if I'm shooting out at longer range. Now, if you don't have any rings and you struggle with recoil, give this wrist technique a shot. You might find it's a little bit easier and you have more control instead of using just your thumbs to control the recoil. Now, one more tip I'll give you, call it a bonus. Whenever you're shooting and controlling recoil, regardless of whether you're tilting your wrist or you're just pulling back with your thumb, try focusing on the dot in your optic or the front sight of your gun and keep the target itself in your peripheral vision. In the real world, it's called front sight focus, and in the game, it's going to help you tremendously with recoil control. When you focus on the target itself and not the red dot, it's going to take longer to react whenever your aim starts drifting. When you're watching the red dot or the front sight the whole time, you're going to see your aim start to drift sooner, and it's going to feel a lot easier and faster to react and try to correct it. Now, I'm not sure why this is. It just seems like I have a lot more control over my aim whenever I'm focused on the sight instead of the target. As long as the enemy is still in your peripheral vision, you should still be able to track him and react to his movements. And if you have tracer rounds equipped, it becomes even easier. I think it's because it looks like there's a line going straight to your target. Now, give these tips a shot. Let me know what you think down below. Once you practice the second trick that I showed you, it becomes a lot easier just because you're able to do it all at once and it becomes muscle memory. Just remember to aim in and fire first and foremost before you start practicing the recoil control, or it can throw you off. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I have a bunch of videos planned. One involves aim assist and what to do to fix it on the days that it feels weaker. I'm sure any of you that play every day know what I'm talking about. Make sure to subscribe if you want the notification. And if you haven't seen my video on audio fixes and responsiveness, make sure to check that out. They can really help you out if you're on PC. If you found this video helpful, drop a like. Follow me over on Twitter to stay up to date on everything Warzone 2, and subscribe to the YouTube channel for more short, straight to the point videos like this. I'll catch you next time, and if not, kick rocks. Peace.
Kick rocks, bitch.